what's on the ranch that you should be afraid of. It's what follows you when you leave.
When I was 13 to 14, me and my friends would sneak out and go hang out with our boyfriends out in the middle of nowhere. We lived basically in the middle of nowhere, so going to random back roads was pretty much our only option for having fun. We would go to this place the locals called the Tunnel. It was just a dirt road with tall trees and overgrown willows on both sides. It was very secluded, so we would go there to drink beer, smoke weed, and make out with our boyfriends. They'd always tell us spooky stories of a large black dog that would chase their car every time they went down there at night. They said one time they went there during the day and they saw the dog dead and mangled on the side of the road. The next time they went back at night, the black dog was alive and well and chasing after their car again. I knew they were just telling us these stories to scare us, and I wasn't sure if I really believed them, since I'd came down to this place with them a few times and had never seen the black dog. One night, around 1 or 2 in the morning, we were all sitting in our friend's car in the tunnel. We had all been drinking and smoking weed. We were all joking and laughing when suddenly the driver whispers, "What is that up there?" I looked and didn't see anything, so I replied, "There's nothing up there. Your eyes are playing tricks on you." "No, seriously. There's something in the road up there," he replies. The guy sitting in the passenger seat agrees and says he sees something too. The driver puts the car in drive and starts slowly rolling forwards, and a figure emerges from the dark. A man in shorts is standing in the middle of the road watching us drive towards him. This is a dirt road in the middle of nowhere at 2 in the morning on a very cold fall night, and this man is standing in the road, wearing nothing but shorts, not even shoes on, just shorts. "What the hell is he doing?" the driver says as he pushes on the brakes and stops the car. We all stare for a moment at this man just staring at us. His eyes were glowing, like a deer's eyes do in the headlights. I've never seen a person's eyes glow like that before. We all start freaking out, and then the driver says, "Forget this," and starts driving forward, fast. The man just keeps staring at us until we get about 10 feet away, and then he just calmly walks to the side of the road and vanishes. There was nowhere for him to go. There were 6-foot-tall fences with willows overgrown over the fence, making the barrier at least 10 feet tall. No human man could have cleared all of that. I still can't explain it to this day. This happened about 5 years ago when I was a high school student. It was summer, and a friend of mine from an after-school club came up to me and said, "Hey, I heard from one of the guys about this place that is supposed to be haunted. Everyone's going to go later. Are you in?" Hell yes, I was in. I loved anything spooky at that age. So that night at about 7 o'clock, we headed to the location. There were 9 of us in total. We all went to the same club and often hung out together. We were heading to the middle of nowhere. There were nothing but flatlands and fields as wide as the eye could see. It was going to be developed on a new bunch of houses that were planned there. I was like, "Where the hell are we going, guys?" And someone replied, "To the park." I started to doubt the existence of a park in this desolate area, but we found it after a few more fields. It was completely run down, and I bet that it was hardly ever used. All you could hear was the insects of the night. It was weird to see the empty fields and the partially level grounds all around, and then a park smack bang in the middle. It was a little spooky. There was no reason why it shouldn't have been leveled for the planned construction. Once we got there, my friend started to tell us about the alleged haunting. He said that the swing in this park swings by itself even on days when the wind doesn't blow. I expected it to slightly sway in the wind, but it was like it was being violently thrown around in anger by some unseen force. It was amazing. I didn't expect to see anything like that. I thought that it must be a trick or something. I thought one of the other guys was pulling some fishing line or something. I looked over, and they were all as shocked as I was. I carefully looked at their hands and legs to see if they were moving with the same rhythm as the swing, but they weren't. One of my friends said, "Let's take a video," and went to pull his phone out of his pocket. He aimed his phone at the swing, and then something really weird happened. The moment he pointed it at the swing, his phone went flying as if someone had slapped it out of his hand. We stood there completely dumbstruck. If any of my friends were planning this prank, they might have just smashed a phone. I realized that it wasn't a prank. It was real. Everyone looked completely shocked. My friend stooped to pick up his phone in silence. Then we heard a terrible scream. We just bolted out of there. The screams only seemed to get louder and louder the further away we got from the park. These voiceless screams followed us for about 5 minutes, I swear. We burst into a nearby convenience store to take refuge from what just happened. The store was busy and it served as a welcome distraction. We bought some drinks to calm down. The friend who told us the rumor looked the most worried. He said he wasn't even sure we went to the right park. It was all a confusing mess. During that summer, everyone talked about the park. All the kids at school wanted to go there, and myself and my friends went back a couple of times, to be honest. Nothing else really happened, and everyone thought that the rumors died down. One thing you might find interesting is that a couple of years after graduating, I ran into one of the friends who was there that day. It was the guy whose phone got smacked out of his hand. He said that when we were running away, he looked back, and I guess he was the only one who did because no one else mentioned this. He said he saw a person with long limbs, like a stick insect. He said that it was chasing us, and it seemed like it was almost dancing, teetering, turning and twisting, almost falling. The image of a person with long spindly legs really sends shivers up my spine. I am kind of glad I didn't see it. When I was 15, me and my friends were driving around, going to all the haunted places around the Uinta Basin. It was getting close to Halloween, so, as is tradition, we were all trying to scare each other. First, we went to a place called the Haunted Woods. This is an actual business, not a place in the woods. Then we went to an abandoned hotel near the Ute Reservation. Nothing of significance happened there. We didn't see or hear anything, and we were just goofing around and having fun. Then the driver says we were going to Skinwalker Ranch. I'd never heard of Skinwalker Ranch, but I'd heard plenty of stories of skinwalkers. I was intrigued at first, but as we dropped down the hill, back behind the property, a feeling of total dread settled on me like a heavy blanket. Everyone in the car got more and more quiet, like they were feeling the heaviness too. I don't think we should be here, I spoke softly. Oh, we're going, the driver announced. There's no moon tonight and no flashlights allowed, he continued. I will just stay in the truck then. I have a really bad feeling, and I don't want to go, I spoke again. You aren't staying in my truck alone. Now get out, he said rudely. I got out of the truck and looked over at my best friend. Her face was white and her eyes were wide and round, and I knew she felt the same way that I did. We shouldn't be here. The driver of the truck said that this was the back end of the huge ranch. I wouldn't have believed him that this was really Skinwalker Ranch if I didn't feel that it was in every nerve ending of my body. He walked over to an ancient post and pole fence, undid the loop of wire holding up a small gate, and laid it on the ground. there was an overgrown 2-track road leading up into the darkness, and we followed as he led us up it. The horrible feeling of dread was almost overwhelming, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I wanted to go running back to the truck, but I had a deep fear that something would pounce the moment I left the safety of the group. We weren't laughing and joking here. That heaviness was weighing on all of us, and we walked silently through the dark. As we walked, I tried to keep my eyes on my feet, but would occasionally glance to either side of the 2-track road. Each time I did, I would see a huge black mass out in the tall grass. I told myself it was just a cow, but each time I looked, it was in the same spot off to the left, following our journey to the old homestead. Finally, the driver and leader of our foolish expedition stopped and said that we were almost to the old homestead, that we needed to stay quiet in case the owners were around. As he turned to start walking again, a growl leapt from the darkness, and he stopped and took a step back. He wasn't our fearless leader anymore. His voice shook as he told us it was time to head back to the truck. We walked a little ways back, and then one of our group said they needed to use the bathroom. We stopped by a small stream running along the south end of the property. I was smoking and talking to one of my friends about how relieved I was that we were leaving. I glanced down at the stream at the same time my friend did, just in time to see a black figure emerging from the water. It was not a cow. It was not a coyote. It looked like a too skinny and too tall man. We both screamed and ran back to the road. That was the last straw for everyone, and we all ran the entire way back to the truck. Now, I know that is eerie, but kind of uneventful. Have no fear, my story isn't over yet. A few months later, this adventure had slowly left my mind. I had started to convince myself that the figures in the darkness were just cows, and that it probably was just the dark running water playing tricks on my eyes, making me see things emerging from the water that weren't really there. My best friend had come over to my house to sit outside, bullshit and smoke cigarettes. We did this pretty frequently. Like I said in my last story, we lived in the middle of nowhere, so dumb things like this were about as much fun as we could have. So we are sitting in her car, just across the road from my house. Her car is pointed towards the town park, which was about a block away. There are no other houses on the way to the park, so with the street lamps on at the park, you can basically see everything up there. "Oh, look, a deer," my friend says suddenly. I could see a set of glowing eyes on the very far end of the park. "Oh, yep, there it is," I reply. We watch it as it slowly walks towards the center of the park. In this spot is a huge metal slide/jungle gym thing that is probably 10 to 12 feet tall. As the deer is walking, I notice that for some reason, I can't make out any features of the deer. It seems to always be just out of reach of the street lamps that are dotted throughout the park. The deer is right next to the slide when, suddenly, it stands up. The eyes that we were watching are suddenly even with the platform of the slide, which would make this deer 10 to 12 feet tall. Then, it starts to walk, standing on its hind legs. Me and my friend both started panicking. What the hell is it? That's not a deer. We keep watching this extremely tall creature across the park when my friend decided we're driving up there. She locks the doors and we head towards the park. When we were almost there, the eyes had crossed the street and went into the neighborhood across from the park. By the time we got there, whatever it was had vanished. Another few months go by. The event had definitely rattled us, and there was no convincing ourselves that it was a deer. Deer do not walk on their hind legs, and they are not 10 feet tall. One night, I'm at the same friend's house. This friend lived smack dab in the middle of a huge farmland. All around her were pastures, It was very peaceful most of the time. We spent the night watching movies and hanging out. I went and started my car, and we were smoking together on her porch before I left. We were just chatting when suddenly her eyes leave my face and look behind me, and her eyes grow wide. I turned to look to see two glowing red eyes just past the fence into her neighbor's pasture. "What the hell is that?" I managed to squeak out. "I don't know," she whispers back. The eyes remained fixed on us for about 30 seconds, then turned to the left, blinked, and vanished. We both ran back to the house. I didn't dare go home for another 45 minutes. If my car hadn't already started, I probably wouldn't have left at all. A couple of years after these events, I was speaking with an Ute tribal member that I worked with, and she said something that gives me goosebumps to this day. She told me, "It isn't what's on the ranch that you should be afraid of. It's what follows you when you leave." I'm convinced that something followed us from Skinwalker Ranch, and those terrifying events were something warning us to never go back. I never did, and I never will. This happened about 10 years ago when I was working in a rural area. My work colleagues and I were staying in a kind of hostel or dormitory at the time, right in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally. You open the front door of the hostel and there is absolutely no sign of life out there. It was a purpose-built building for us workers to stay in, to oversee the work we had in that area. In the daytime, the place is busy and lively, but at night, it's eerily quiet. It's just so dark out there. It always felt like something was watching me at night, and it didn't like me. There were a couple of streetlights, but nothing much else. As an adult man, I was freaked out to take a walk by myself at night. There were no shops around, nothing to do. It really was in the middle of nowhere. All we could do was sit indoors and get drunk, which wasn't all that bad. This story takes place one night when we were drinking. We were in good spirits since it was a Friday, and it was a late one. Whenever we do these late drinking nights, I usually get some water before heading to bed to sober up. With being too drunk to drive, I had to go to the vending machine up the road a little. I didn't really want to go alone. Something about being out there really creeped me out. So I asked a colleague if he wanted to go with me. Thankfully, he said he wanted to, and we set off on a short walk to the vending machine. I felt great. The night air was sobering me up a little, and I was chatting with my coworker. We arrived at the vending machine. My colleague went ahead of me and got a drink. He cracked it open and started staring off into the distance. "What the hell is that?" I heard him say as I was inserting coins into the machine. I scanned the dark horizon. There was nothing but trees swaying in the breeze and a few distant rice fields. The night air was full of various chirps of insects and croaks of bullfrogs. Nothing but darkness. I didn't know what my friend was talking about.
"Hey,"
a voice called from the darkness. My blood ran ice cold. My eyes widened, and in a panic, I tried to find the owner of that voice, but I couldn't.
"Hey. Hey."
It was slightly louder now. Shivers ran up my spine. Someone else was out here with us. I looked over at my friend, and I followed his eyeline. And that's when I saw it. There was someone out there. I mean, it looked human. It looked to be male too. Something was off though. Its head was bigger than a normal human, and it looked to be on stilts because it was massive. It was clad in black, but had a bone-white face. The huge, hulking figure just stood motionlessly staring at us, about 200 meters away from the vending machine. I couldn't say a word. I just stared in horror. Then my friend bolted. I had to run after him. Thankfully, we didn't have too far to run. Of course, all our colleagues didn't believe our crazy story when we got back, but there were some looks towards the window, checks of the locks, and none of them offered to go outside in search of what we had seen. I cannot 100% say if that thing was a human. It was the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life, and that moment has haunted me for years. I have no idea what it wanted, but I think that if my friend and I didn't react in time, we might not be here today. There are things out there we have no idea about. This is a story of when I went on a family trip to my uncle's pig farm. He lives in Niigata. My uncle lives really far from my parents' home. He lives alone on the farm, deep in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. I was about 7 years old. It all happened on a day in the middle of summer. I was with my cousins, 4 children and 2 adults. We had just to wait at work until everyone was done. We were getting in the way. I can't remember the reason why we went there. I think we went to visit him, to get some wild vegetables in the mountains. I'd been sat in the car for 2 hours. We lived by the sea. The car rocked and shook the whole journey. Finally, we reached the pig farm. It stunk to high heaven. My family had said that it was deep in the mountains. When I got there, it was much further in the middle of the mountains than I imagined. I guess if you're used to it, it's probably nice. But to me, a person who had never been to a pig farm, honestly, it was painful. So the adults went looking for these wild vegetables, and us kids went off to play. Just a little down the fill from the pig farm, there was a wide, empty, vacant plot of land. We played tag there. We were all about the same age. We eventually got bored of playing tag, so we wanted to do something else. We had enough of where we were. I think it was one of my cousins who absent-mindedly suggested, let's look around. We all agreed to explore the area. We got permission from our parents and off we went. We started by looking around the perimeter of where we were. We soon found a sign that read, "Do not enter." It hung on a rope. Beyond it, a path into the forest. As a child, when you come across a sign which reads, "Do not enter," it means, please enter. It fans the flames of your sense of curiosity. Naturally, we climbed over the rope and entered the path to the forest. It wasn't a pavemented path, but surprisingly, a well-maintained woodland path. There were several warehouse buildings. I had never seen anything like this in my hometown. The buildings were all derelict. I felt a sense of pity. We continued walking for a little while, and then we saw some people ahead of us walking as well. When I think back to it, it is strange that there were people walking along that road, especially since the sign said, "Do not enter." But at the time, I didn't care in the slightest. As we got closer to them, I saw that one was wearing a straw hat and was carrying a hoe in his hand. He had a towel wrapped around his neck. He was wearing big leather boots as well. He looked like your typical farmer. He looked old enough, 70 or even 80 maybe. He noticed we were approaching and stopped and said in his countryside accent, "What are you doing in here?" I couldn't understand what he was saying. My cousin translated for us. Before any of us could answer, he asked, "You here to catch some bugs?" Because we didn't have a better answer, we just looked at each other and nodded. "If you keep going, it's even better." He said something like that. We carried on walking along the path. "Scary," I muttered to my cousin. He looked creeped out too. We saw the occasional farming machine as we walked, tractors, etc. I don't know why we didn't turn back. I guess we were fueled by curiosity. We saw the figure of a person up ahead. He had a straw hat on, leather boots, a towel around his neck, and he was holding a hoe. "What are you doing in here?" "What?" I thought.
You here to catch some bugs?
He said before he said anything.
If you keep going, it's even better.
It was exactly the same. A repeat. I don't know if the others realized at the time. It was so weird. This time, I didn't say scary. Since no one said anything, I thought it might be my mind playing tricks on me. The rest of the group started to walk, and I said, maybe we should go back soon. My cousin said, we haven't found anything. Why would we go back? The others agreed with him. I reluctantly followed them deeper down that forest trail. We came across the same factory buildings, farming machines, tractors. Hey, we've been here before. Are we lost? I asked. We've been walking on one road in one direction. How can we be lost? They sensed something strange was happening now. Even at this point, our curiosity was greater than our sense of fear. We hadn't had any experiences with danger. We didn't know true fear at that age. There he was again, the man in the straw hat. I couldn't stand anymore. I ran for it. Hey, my cousins shouted. They pulled at my shirt. They asked why I was running. I didn't answer. I just wanted to get away. Before too long, I was back at the rope we all climbed over. I ran to my parents. Maybe I was crying, I can't remember. I told everyone what had happened. They looked at me suspiciously. Everyone laughed at my story and said there is no such thing. Except my uncle. He approached me later that evening and asked, "Did you step over the rope? Did you go into the do not enter place?" I nodded. "Did you get stuck in a loop?" He began to speak in detail. It seems like the no entry place's forest road is home to bears, wild boars and other dangerous animals. Hunters are allowed to enter with permission, but that is extremely rare. A lumber supply company used to use the road to get to the factories. It was used by tradesmen as well. That's why it was so well maintained. He seemed to think something was trying to pull us closer into the woods, trying to bewitch or trick us. He said something could have taken the form of the man. He said he would not go further than we did. I wondered why I was the only one who noticed the weird loop. I didn't want to ask at the time. Whatever that man was, he was trying to keep us lost in there. This occurred to me and my then girlfriend in the summer of 2004. I need to provide a bit of context first though, so the context will be the first little bit. My hometown was decimated by flooding from Hurricane Floyd in 1999. Part of the response and recovery efforts involved FEMA setting up RVs as temporary housing for those whose homes were either destroyed or heavily damaged. These RVs were set up in a previously vacant field outside of town. The park was dismantled by 2001 or so. They put up fencing around the perimeter and trenched over the other streets into the area to keep people out. But they forgot one entrance, or left it purposely open for emergency vehicles to have access. Some friends of mine had found this entrance, and we frequently used the area as our playground. We would go back there to set off fireworks, turn the streets into a race course, and to have sex with our girlfriends. To set the stage of how this place looks, there were 3 streets running east-west orientation, a street that went around the other streets in an oval fashion. The grass was very overgrown and about 4 feet high. The south and north side of the area was wooded. The east side had large dirt berms that were about 20 feet high and had been placed there when the site was graded in 1999. They normally provided a climbing challenge for our SUVs. This particular day, my girlfriend and I were parked on one of the east-west streets along the tall grass to remain hidden. We got undressed to have sex in the back seat of the car. As we began, I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there is a man coming over the 20-foot-high dirt berm. He's wearing denim overalls, and in his left hand is a full-size axe. A wave of fear washed over me, and I yelled out, "Oh my God." My girlfriend pops up to look out the back windshield and let out a scream and "What are we going to do?" I frantically start looking for the car keys. There is a pile of clothes on the floorboard and I can't find them. I look out the back and he's getting closer. I can see his face now and it's emotionless with a blank stare. I start grabbing clothes and shaking them to hopefully find the keys. They pop loose and fall to the floor. I grab them and immediately jump into the driver's seat, still completely naked. I start the car, and from the back seat my still naked girlfriend screams "Go." I look in the rearview mirror as I'm putting the car into drive, and he's now within about 50 to 60 feet of the car. Same blank look, but staring at the car with the axe still in hand. I didn't even fasten my seatbelt, and I'm still fully nude as I floored the gas, kicking up rocks everywhere as the tires spun, as I sped away from this man holding the axe. We got out of the abandoned FEMA park as quickly as I could drive the car without crashing. My girlfriend was hysterical the whole time until we got back to the main road and were safe. We stopped about a mile up the road, on the side, to put our clothes back on and de-stress. I don't know where this man came from, as there are no houses within a mile or so of the old FEMA site. He seemingly came out of nowhere. I also did not see any cars at the site, as I had done a lap around the park before we chose our spot to park. I'm not sure what his intentions were, as he never said anything to us, and I know he saw us panicking in the car. Whatever his intentions were, I know they weren't good. The look on his face and the axe in his hand made that abundantly clear. I went back with a few friends a couple of days later and found no place this guy could have been lurking, and there were no signs anyone had been camping there. To this day, it's one of the scariest events I've ever been through. Whoever the Axeman was and whatever he was planning, let's not meet.
Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.